put together a kind of a presentation very hurriedly this morning. And I thought I'd share what it is that we're doing in the UK, and what our direction is over the next 3 years, essentially. So let me see if I can find that presentation. So the direction that we're going to take over the next 3 years is called Space to Stammer. And this has really evolved out of the work that we've done so far. We've introduced a new service last year, an advocacy service, to support people who've been discriminated against. We've started a training service to train organisations how to work, not simply about employing people who stammer, but providing services to people who stammer and engaging with people who stammer. And then, of course, we've got our public messaging and our campaigns. So what we're going to do over the next 3 years is target different industries in the UK and show them the problems that people face who stammer and how they can include people who stammer and where those barriers are. And we think that if we can do that, we can help normalise stammering. So there is a process here. It's looking at what the issue is, what it is that faces people, to amass as much information as we can to do that, and then to look at what that information tells us, and then using that information to look at what training there is that needs to be done, and then communicate that message to the world. Sorry, I'm trying to look at chat at the same time and I realise I can't. So the surveys are a really important thing. Normally we hear through our helpline or through listening to members about the problems they face. And last year we heard about a problem someone faced in just ringing their GP, their doctor, and making an appointment with a doctor. And so we did a survey with our members and we compiled in all the information together about the issues that they faced. And then we set up a document to look at what changes they should make. So we detailed all the findings from the survey about the distress people felt, about the appointments that were not made and about the implications of that. And then took them through from the lens of operating a kind of a GP surgery, looking at the difficulties they face and then making recommendations. And so then what we did was the kind of key 3 recommendations was around training, was around flexible booking channels, and around making sure that you know whether or not a patient stammers. And so these are very practical things that we provided for GP surgeries to help them think about the needs for people who stammer. This year we've been looking at coffee shops. So we surveyed over 1,500 people, some of whom stammered and some of whom don't stammer. It's almost about 50-50. And what we found was that lots of people who stammer, 58%, don't always order what it is that they want in a coffee shop. And interestingly, 31% of people who don't stammer don't always order what they want. Now, many of the reasons that people don't order what they want is because it's too expensive, or social pressures, or dietary pressures. So we dug into that. And the reason that people who stammer gave was for not ordering what they wanted was their stammer. But interestingly, 8% of people who don't stammer also had a problem with communication. We looked at saying your name, which is what Starbucks does a lot here. 83% said that that was very hard of people who stammer, and of people who don't stammer, 6% said that they find that hard. So there is a kind of a 5 to 6 to 8% section of the population who don't stammer, but who also share the same problems that people who stammer have in ordering. So we've produced a document looking at what it is that we think that coffee shops need to do. We'll talk to the brands. We're going to distribute the findings and set up training. So I'll stop sharing that now for the moment. We think that if we can make and what we'll do next is we'll look at, once we finish with coffee shops later this year, we'll look at call centres, help desks, because we know that 99% of all of the help desks, whether it's a mental health or kind of helplines, or whether it's helplines for IT or for banking or for anything, we know that they haven't thought about the fact that the silent calls that they get may well be people who are blocking on those calls. And so we have training ready, we've got support ready for how they can change their systems and accommodate people who stammer. So the idea is that we use the data that we have, not just one story, but as many stories as we can, to continue to provide the evidence, the clear evidence that a service is failing as customers, a service is failing to reach people that they want to reach, or provide a good service for people who they want to provide a good service for, because they haven't got the systems in place to support people who stammer. If we can get that message out that we want to, that there are easy things to do, that there are ways that we can help them make those changes, we think that we can make stammering just another one of those things. And if we can make stammering just another one of those differences, we think that we can normalize and break the stigma that surrounds stammering. So that was kind of quite a short presentation. What questions are there? My dad does not stammer, but is too shy to order, and since I was a child, I ordered for him. I think that that's really common, and it continues to be very common. And what we found was that people who wanted to go and see their GP, their doctor, would ask someone to make that appointment for them or bring that person with them. Now, I don't think that's acceptable. So I think if we can create the conditions that people are almost expecting to hear and understand and know how, know that people stammer, they can start to make those accommodations. But we have to get society to sit up and listen to us, give them the evidence and show them how they can change. Because if we don't do that, then nobody else will do that. It is down to us to do that for them and to explain the changes. So what we're doing is we're creating resources which will sit on our website so that anyone who is having difficulties ordering a coffee or going to or make an appointment with a GP can download those resources and share those resources with the company concerned so that the company can do better. For the coffee shops, we're going to be talking with the brands, and we've started that process already, so it's very early days, and look at seeing whether we can provide bespoke training for them. And we've already got kind of details about the kinds of changes that we think they can make. So have menus on the counters so that people can point, make sure that there is space and that staff are trained so that they can bring someone down a counter so that they're not pushed by they're not worried about the queue behind them. So we've got those recommendations. We'll get the training in place. And yes, then we're going to start to the major brands first. And we think if we can get the major brands trained and have this start to create this systemic cultural change, this systemic kind of organizational change, so it isn't just one person trying something, it's part of the training that baristas go through. It's part of the training that customer relations have, then we think we can make those kind of differences. Thank you, Tim, for the compliments of the website. What other questions has anyone got? One old lady kept asking my 8-year-old questions in a shop. He tapped me to indicate he wanted to answer, but she insisted and said why he does not answer. I want to hear from him. I think that we do need to, the name of our campaign is Space to Stammer. And I think that the overarching desire is to insist that society do create space to stammer. I think that we're always going to have internal discussions about how everybody is and how they feel about their stammer and all of that kind of stuff. But my job is to try and change the rest of the world and try and change the culture around people who stammer so that room is made for them, so that we do expect and allow people who stammer time to speak. Hi, Ian. It's early days. We've started to talk, so it's early days. But yes, some of the conversations we've had with the cafes and really overall through all the companies is that they have this great light bulb moment and they think, wow, we haven't thought about people who stammer. Yes, this makes perfect sense. Yes, we would like to work with you. And yes, in this world of acceptance of difference, this makes perfect sense. So there's never, I don't think we found any kind of pushback ever about the lessons that we have. There is a really willing audience out there and they're wanting to hear from people. But I think we need to give them the information in a way which is structured and evidence-based and tailored to those different industries so that it works for them. Stammer worked with a company called Money Wellness last year, and they provide assistance for people who are struggling with their finances. We said, have you thought about, like, most of your most of the way that you deal with people are through phone calls. So have you had any dealings with people who stammer? And they said no. No dealings with people who stammer, and they've had no complaints. We asked them whether they have many silent calls, and they said yes, they did. And we worked with them, or my colleague Kirsten worked with them, and they made some changes to the way that they took calls. And then they contacted us and they said, that was amazing. We've had like 3 recommendations of people who stammer come and say, that call was amazing. Thank you so much for that call. And they then realized that they have been having calls from people who stammer, but those calls probably haven't gone very well. They didn't get a complaint, because I think people who stammer are very polite normally, but they didn't really help those people. And so they were thrilled with the impact that they've had, and they've started to tell all of their suppliers about the way they take calls from the public and thinking about people who stammer. They were really chuffed with it, and I think that that's really reassuring for us to hear, but I think it's reassuring for everyone to hear that there is an audience out there who are willing to listen, but we need to tell them what the problems are. Is there some kind of sticker shops can get when they are stammer friendly? No, that has been discussed. I think it's down to, I think we're early days at this point. Obviously, prior to this, we worked with a restaurant chain, and the restaurant chain now allow you to order digitally if you want to order from them. I think it's down to the brands and down to the companies about how they want to be. But I think that we really need to approach the companies and show them the changes that need to happen, because I think that they're open for those changes, and now is a brilliant time to do that. Is there a Cantonese language support group in the UK? There isn't, I don't think. We're always open to new groups, so if anybody would like to start one, that would be brilliant. Any other kind of questions or comments?
Yes, I've got one. Jane, I really enjoyed what you presented there. It was really helpful, and I also commented in the box that I've actually used a lot of your resources in the past. Jane, they've been extremely helpful. My point and observation is a general one, that the people with stammers who are presented on the media or to television, the stammer is that small that it really isn't an issue. And I really, from my own experience and speaking with other persons with stammers also, if they presented stammerers who had a moderate or severe stammer, that would help hugely. But it's up to us as people with stammers, to really illustrate, Jane, the range and the breadth of a stammer and the stammer in various situations also.
Absolutely. I think it's, I would so much want to have people with good, solid stammers to go on television, because it is very frustrating when you hear someone talk about stammering and you don't actually hear them stammer at all. And I think that doesn't really help the public or the media really understand what the problem is at all. So yeah, it is a struggle, and it's a really struggle to find those people and stick them on the television. But yeah, we'll continue to try.
And I think also, just my last question on it, the actual sort of language around the stammering can be quite derogatory. I've read reports about a sports event. It might sort of be a match, and they mentioned that the player had a stammering approach. I'm just wondering if STAMMA are active in that and to contest the sort of language that's used around the reporting that I gave an example of, that really portrays the stammerer less than flatteringly.
It is a constant problem. It isn't just sports. There was a reference the other day on social media by, I think, the RNLI, which is a charity here for kind of lifeboats, and they had a penguin, and the penguin was stuttering, and it was a reference to a chocolate bar, and the idea is actually that the penguin is cold, not that he's necessarily got a stammer. But anyway, I reached out to them and said that, the problem with continuing to use this penguin and to talk about this penguin is that for many people, a lot of the bullying that they received included reference to that penguin, and mimicked what was said about the penguin. Pick up a penguin. So they immediately took it down. But it is an ongoing problem, and at some point we'll focus upon just that. I think I want to kind of get some of those bigger wins first. And so one of the bigger wins, I think, first is call centres. In my previous job, I ran a call centre, a helpline for men, and we had millions of calls. And silent calls was a big issue, and I hadn't thought about the issue then. And I know that all of the other mental health helplines haven't thought about it still, even now. And when you think about the whole call centre, there are millions of calls every day to help desks. And I want to make that process easy for people who stammer. And I think that we can do that. We just need to get those big top line messages out there. But yes, I think the way that people use the words stammering is always derogatory, and it's very unhelpful.